Well, hello, and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and ITWire interview. I'm joined today by Philip Goldie. He's the Vice President and Managing Director of Okta ANZ. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Alex, great to meet you, and thanks for setting up and having this time together.
Thank you for taking the time as well. Now, before we continue further, can you please remind us of the Okta story in 2022 and the products, services, and benefits offered to customers globally?
Yeah, sure. It's like I'm 3 months into my job here at Octa and having a ton of fun. It's been a great few months getting to know the company and the products, and most importantly, the customers.
Mm-hmm.
Octa is 13 years old now, established out of San Francisco, and it's just seen phenomenal growth, particularly in the last few years. At our core, we're an identity provider. We believe we're building the standard for neutral cloud-based identity for a range of different use cases, and the company, I think, is just delighting customers with that technology. So 2022 has been another huge year for us. It's a year since we acquired another company called Auth0, which is now fully part of the Octa family, which really helps us address the customer identity as well as Octa's historical strengths around workforce identity. So things are going well. I won't lie, it's good fun, and it's great to be spending time with customers and hearing the great ways that they're using the platform.
Absolutely. Now, Phil, as we speak, you're in the midst of Okta's city tour in Sydney, in Australia, obviously. And so how is the event going? And what are the major points you'd like attendees to take away, especially if some people are only able to watch this?
Yeah, sure. I think, look, firstly, it's great just to be back face to face. I know there's been
Yeah,
an
absolutely.
explosion of Sydney-based and Melbourne-based events over the last few weeks as things kind of gear up again. But just the energy in the room, the ability to talk face to face, and that buzz. It's been a great morning getting to do that once again after many of these things happening virtually. I think, look, we've really anchored the discussion in our customers. We've got a couple of fantastic customer forums where we're hearing from customers like TAL, like catch.com.au, which is part of the Wesfarmers Group, and others. And we'll do the same in Melbourne and Auckland. And they're sharing their journey about where they're at with really, I would say, moving identity from a tooling and a technology-based decision to something that's much more of a strategic decision, cuts across workforce and partners and customers at a true enterprise level. And so, that's really the focus, is sharing that journey. And we see customers candidly on a range of different points in that journey at the moment. They're starting to really, I think, realize that identity is a strategic decision for them. It's one where they have to place a 5, 7, 10-year bet on a particular provider. We think we're a good bet, and obviously, Okta is a great platform. But I think the number one thing we can do as a leader in this space is really share the story of the customers and the journeys that they've been on, and that's been great to do as well. So hopefully, people walk away from the event clear that this is something they've really got to double down on and really think about how to use identity strategically in the organization, and that they learn what other companies are doing. I think that will be a great walk away for everyone.
Now, Okta has sponsored new IDC research entitled The Role of Customer Identity in a Digital First World, which I'll provide a link to in the description of this video and in the article that this video will be embedded into. But let's start at the beginning. What is your definition of digital first, and how does this take digital transformation to a new level, as it states in the report, and what are the tangible benefits that businesses and their customers can enjoy?
Yeah, sure. I think, well, first of all, digital first from an IDC point of view, as they've done the research, what that really means in practical sense is organizations that see their digital strategy and business strategy as one and the same. And I think that's often talked about, but there are very clear examples, customers we're talking to today who really think that way. They think of themselves as a digital first business. Technology is not only intrinsic to how they go to market, but they think firstly about the impact of technology on how they service customers or employees or partners. And they take that approach in everything they do. And so a lot of those organizations, frankly, were probably better positioned before the pandemic. They'd made investments, they'd started to shift to that sort of thinking. And what the research shows now is post-pandemic, or as we maybe more correctly move to the next phase of the pandemic, they're really well positioned in terms of the results that they're seeing. So that's what that's the way that we think about being digital first.
Mm-hmm.
the tangible benefits I think that we're seeing, and there are many in the report, so it's really worth kind of digging through some of the meat of that. But a couple of things that stood out for me, versus the rest of the Asia region, Australia and New Zealand businesses show up really, really well. We have a much higher percentage of companies that are saying, yes, we think we're digital leaders now. That's the way we think of ourselves in terms of how I describe the business model.
Yep.
Versus Asia, where it's a much more mixed bag, and there's a lot of organizations maybe in earlier stages. So, I think Australia and New Zealand organizations can sort of hold our heads high and say, hey, we're really punching above our weight and really leading the world in terms of digital adoption. And so that's really great to see. In terms of the real benefits and what are the tangible outcomes, I think one of the things that stuck out for me, IDC looked at about 10 different business outcome metrics. So look beyond just the technology and what's the actual business impact here. Whether that's revenue, customer experience, retention, loyalty, etc., particularly on that customer side of things. And across the board, pretty consistently, the digital leaders, the organizations that are talking about being digital first, saw about a 1.5 times better performance in almost all of those key measures versus organizations that are probably earlier on in the journey. So, as we said in the main stage here at the City Tour, this shift from identity as a tooling decision to a strategic decision can have really powerful business outcomes, particularly when it comes to customer identity. And no surprise then that they also invest heavily and they use customer identity technologies like Octa and Auth0, pervasively in the organization. They've really invested time. So they're getting operational benefits. They're saving money from not building and rebuilding identity as part of their core platforms. But it's really translating into tangible business outcomes, which is great to see.
So with the pandemic, as you said, we're sort of in this post-pandemic phase, and there was obviously a lot of momentum around digital acceleration, which was great. I mean, it's one of the benefits of everyone having to use cloud services and go online, and it was really good to see this massive acceleration. So how much of that momentum continues today, and what were some of the facts and figures uncovered in the report around this?
Yeah, I think whether we're post-pandemic or in just a different phase, I mean, the shift that we've seen in terms of adoption of technology and organizations being more digitally led is really profound. I was reflecting in the keynote this morning that in 25 years of technology, you see buzzwords come and go, and digital transformation has been one that's been much used over the last few years. But, genuinely, I think the acceleration driven by the pandemic and the need to do things differently has been very, very visible to everybody. And so we're seeing that in the research, and what the report shows is, again, organizations that were investing and really thinking about digitally led transformation before the pandemic, not only were very well equipped to deal with that, but have accelerated since then. So that's a very clear trend that you can see in the data. Those organizations have really been able to leapfrog and get ahead, and they've now really evolved to this point where they're thinking about the digital aspects of a business strategy as one in the same thing. And so it's quite a shift in mindset. I think it translates to things like different skills, different hiring, the profile of people that are being brought into organizations. If you look at the rise of hiring of developer roles within traditional businesses as one good barometer of that shift, there are lots of indicators that would suggest that there's a lot of organizations really embracing this. And again, the business metrics speak for themselves, I think, in terms of the tangible outcomes that businesses are seeing when they do that.
So where are Australian and New Zealand businesses placed in terms of being actively digital first, or moving towards being digital first, or are struggling behind? And how do we compare with the rest of the region and the world?
Well, Australia is really well positioned. I think one of the things the research shows is organizations that think of themselves either as a digital pioneer or a digital leader in those top two categories. I think 67% of Australian businesses are saying that's where we feel we are, and based on some of the criteria. So 2/3 of organizations are really saying that they're at that level of readiness and maturity, which is great to see, and that's significantly ahead of most of the other area of research which was done across the APJ region. Australia and New Zealand businesses typically are ahead by a kind of a factor of 2x, which is great to see. I think it's one of the things maybe we underestimate about just how good we are at digital technology adoption here in Australia, and we've got great proof points and customer examples that we're talking about today that really show that we are ahead and we are doing some really groundbreaking things. The other thing the research shows is that most of those organizations that are in that leadership category have got a much more matured identity strategy, particularly at the customer level. They've got higher adoption and use of our platform or other identity technologies, but it really shows that identity underpins transformation and that capability. And so, yeah, great. I think great results for Australia if you think of it in that sense, and shows where we are as a country in terms of coming out of the first phase of the pandemic much more prepared and much better digitally equipped and digital first than we were before.
So you're at the city tour in Sydney for Okta, and obviously you're unveiling new capabilities and features. So how do Okta's latest developments help companies really become digital first?
I think the biggest shift for us over the last 12, 18 months or so has been the coming together of the core Okta platform and then the acquisition that we made with Auth0. And that really rounded out our ability to address, the workforce and employee identity requirements, the requirements for dealing with third parties and partners, as well as what we think is probably one of the biggest shifts and biggest parts of the market, which is customer identity. And so that acquisition, which happened 15 months or so ago, has been just a great coming together of two different leaders in quite different subsegments of the market. And what you're seeing us do now is really think about how does that help our customers pick one identity platform that can span employees, partners, and customers, give you centralized points of control, and really give us a foundation to build a roadmap for those customers going into the future. So it's exciting times, I think, when you think about everything we can do now as a company, given the span and the spread of technologies that we have at our disposal. And that's very common in the customer conversations I'm having. That's one of the things that gets customers really excited, is how do we think about one strategic bet, one strategic platform for identity in the organization? And that's something I think Okta is pretty uniquely positioned to be able to deliver.
Now, with so many companies still yet to adopt a digital-first posture, as explained in the report, what is a typical onboarding process for a new company that seeks Okta's help?
It's a great question. I'll maybe answer that by talking about what's the difference that we see with customers that go on to have success. What do we do jointly differently maybe than in other scenarios? So I think what we see is pre-considering an identity platform, organizations are thinking about, what does it mean to make a strategic decision on identity, and where are we today? What's our level of maturity? And so one of the things that we work on extensively with customers is a maturity model that shows them where they're on, where they are on that journey. And that just helps, I think, anchor the work around the reality of the current situation, but more excitingly, what's possible. So we do that digital maturity assessment, which really, really helps, I think, customers understand that. The second thing that I think adds, again, big value is what will the benefits be? We talked about some of those from a revenue and a customer retention point of view. We have a great team that does that value assessment with customers, that sits down and says, let's help you create the right end state business case for what's going to be possible if we deploy these sorts of technologies. So those two things, I think, are good examples of the work that we do. That's not just about the feeds and speeds and features, but steps back and says, what's the real point of doing this? So when we do that, I think we get really, really good line of sight to the impact in the organization. As we go through the cycle, maybe to the other side, we have professional services, and we have our customer success teams that really handhold customers through go live and post go live, and help them maintain the path that they want to get on in terms of delivering on that business value. I was just sharing with the team here, over the course of the last few weeks, as we closed our quarter, we went live on a massive customer deployment of multi-millions of customer identities. And so that's a piece of work that we can do very, very quickly with our customer success teams. You're talking, hours and days, not weeks and months, to do that sort of migration. So we've got some really, I think, effective, proven methodologies for helping customers make the migration at a good speed, and doing it without impacting customer experience. So lots we can do. It all starts with great conversations where I think we come back to what's the point of doing this, what's the business value going to be, and grounding ourselves there.
Well, I'm just impressed how you've been able to internalize all of that from Okta over the last 3 months. I mean, you're obviously a tech executive and been involved in the space for a long time, but it just makes me wonder. I know it must be changing every day because it's, you had this conference that you're coming up to, but what is a day in life like as a VP and an MD of a major tech identity management company?
Sure, it's good fun would be answer number one. It's, I was at my previous role for 12 years. It's been great to do something new and, different size and scale and a different part of the market. So it's, first and foremost, it's great fun. And I'm really honored and privileged to lead the team here at Okta. Look, I spend as much time as I possibly can doing two core things. One is meeting with customers and partners to try and understand what their needs are and how we can help. And I've met with a variety. I've traveled to San Francisco and London, as well as across Australia and New Zealand, just to meet customers and really understand the problems that they're facing. That's always grounding in terms of having empathy for what our customers are facing. And the second is helping the team. We've hired just a huge number of people over the last sort of 6 to 12 months. And so people are excited to work here. It's a great space. As I've said to the team, I think Octa will, in the next few years, be an industry-defining company, and it'll be a career-defining opportunity working here. And so really working with the team to make sure that they're aligned to what we're trying to do with customers, and they're getting the help and the guidance that they need, and equally that I'm listening and learning from them. So it's a good job, and what I'm enjoying every day so far.
And any sneak peeks into how Octa's technology might evolve over the next couple of years?
I think you'll see us continue just to invest in core identity. I think one of the things that people value about us as a platform is, as our CEO and founder Todd McKinnon says, we do one thing, that's identity. We have 6,000 people around the world that wake up every day thinking about how do we solve that problem for our customers, how do we lead the industry, how do we be a truly neutral identity cloud for the needs of all businesses, big and small. That's what you're going to see us continue to invest in. I think the acquisition and the integration of that technology will continue to be high on the priority in terms of what we do. And so it's exciting times. There's lots going on. I think the rate of innovation at Octa is just staggering. Actually, it's really good to see, and I think you'll see that continue definitely over the next few years.
So one of the questions I always like to ask is, can you please share memories of your first computer?
My first computer, yeah. So I'm going to give away my age here, but also I'll cut to the chase. I'm 48. So let me just timestamp that and go back.
I'm just about to turn 48 very shortly too. So
there you go.
Same sort of vintage. There we go.
Well, my first computer ever was a ZX Spectrum.
Oh yeah.
Two things that remind. Well, number one, it probably helped cement my passion for technology, despite the fact that I remember going to magazine shops and buying magazines with code in that you would then sit and type in the hope of creating some sort of game. Number one. And then secondly, just the sound of the tape recorder loading games onto that device will be forever embedded in my psyche. So that was my first computer, and probably where some of my passion for technology came from.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always fun. I always like to ask everybody about their first computer, because some of the stories are similar, Commodore 64, but there's so many early computers out there, and and today it's so primitive, but they were how things began. So amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
No, well, I'm in the ZX Spectrum camp, not the Commodore 64 camp, and they were two different warring factions. So there you go. You've got that out of me today.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent. Now, my second last question is simply to ask you, what is some of the best advice you've received in life to help you get where you are today?
That's a great question. I actually had the privilege this morning of having breakfast with Ben Crow, who you might know as the high performance mindset coach for Ash Barty and Dylan Olcott. He's keynoting the event here, and it was fantastic just to hear him go back to real basics of asking yourselves questions like, who am I as a person? What is it that I want to get up and be every day? And so just real time today, just that ability to get coaching and some guidance from someone like Ben was really, really unique. And I think the rest of the audience here will hear from Ben in just a short amount of time here at the event. Look, I think one of the things I learned, through my career is just the value of having a growth mindset, being open to new ideas, new challenges. And so that's something I've really tried to work on. And, I think that's been good advice for me personally is, never assume that you're trying to be the smartest person in the room, and always be more interested than interesting. I think, being curious and growth mindset and asking lots of questions has stood me in good stead, and something, hope to continue in this role.
That's excellent advice. I can definitely endorse that. Now, my final question to you is, what is your final message to iTWire viewers and readers, and to your current and future customers and partners?
Yeah, I think, look, if we can help you in terms of thinking about identity, the impact of identity in your organization, and how to shift that from being a tool decision to a strategic decision, then we've got 250 people here in Australia, again, doing one thing, and that's helping customers be successful. So if we can help, then, we'd love for you to reach out. You know where we are, and we're always willing to get involved in having that discussion. So, we think it's really core to organizations to get right, and we're here to help.
Well, Philip Goldie, Vice President and Managing Director of Okta ANZ, thank you so much for taking the time, and also squeezing it out of the Octa City tour that you're at. So I know you've got to get back. So thank you, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Great to spend time with you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.